So Alex and I have left Arizona, and we're now in Arkansas, and we've reset the start of our trip. So we're not going to do the Arizona, Utah, Colorado parks first. We're starting at Hot Springs National Park in Arkansas, and we're going to go up the Mississippi River and hit St. Louis Arch National Park, and then Isle Royale and Voyageurs, and then head west from there. And the reason that we left Arizona was because it was a combination of a few things. It was poor planning on my part when I didn't really anticipate how hard Arizona and Utah would have been for a novice cycle tourist, and that's really, I really feel bad about that because it was hard for me, and I've done 22,000 miles of bike touring on all the major routes, all three transcontinental routes. It was a hard week for me. After we left Tucson, we did a short trip from Tucson to Catalina State Park, which was wonderful because it was on the loop, and we really enjoyed that. And Catalina is a pretty park that's fun to be at. And from Catalina, the next day we had a 55-mile ride up a busy road with a 2,500-foot climb into a windstorm. And then at the top, we had a long descent into Winkleman, but the descent was on a very, very busy road. It's one lane in either direction. It's got a very shoddy shoulder, and cars racing past us, 2 feet away at 65 miles an hour, or let's face it, they were doing 70, 75. So the cars are just shooting by, and it's a Friday afternoon, so people are heading out for the weekend. And that's the only route north into the mountains where it's cool. So I give Alex unbelievable credit for being able to do it. And that was Alex's second day on the road. And so when we got into Winkleman, we decided that the next day we would avoid 37 out of Winkleman over the mountains into Globe. Is a very busy road, especially on the weekends, and we'd be leaving on a Saturday. And it's got no shoulder, and it's very windy. So we decided, we had found an alternate route that went up over the peak of the mountain, Pinal Peak, and there was a Pioneer Pass campground that we were going to stay at the top, and then the next day descend down into Globe. And so we got up very early on Saturday morning. We left Winkleman. We wanted to be off of 37 before the traffic started. We got about 10 or 12 miles out, and we talked to some people, and that's when we found that the road that we had decided to take was a dirt road. But they said, it's not bad. It's hard packed gravel, no potholes, no rock. So we could do that. It's a little slower to go up a dirt road, but we're capable of that. And then they said the road that we wanted, we'd go up it, found the hippie commune, stopped off to fill up with water. It was actually a really wonderful place. It was called Wind Spirit Community. Met one of the original founders, the only founder still there, Don. We talked with Don. He said that it's a hard road, but that it's a steady grade going up, but it would take about 2 days. So we said, okay, we could do that. We could do this. It was about 5,000 feet of climbing, but over 2 days, that's doable. That's not really what the road was. The road was barely a road. It was all potholes, boulders, ruts, and I'm pulling a trailer. So normally my trailer weighs about 70 pounds. Well, then we had enough water for 2 days of extreme exertion, which we loaded into the trailer. And I have to be honest, like I said, I've biked everywhere. That was the hardest day of my entire life. It was 5 or 8 hours at best. At best, when we were in smooth sections that weren't completely rutted out, we would make 2 miles an hour. And we fought our way up that pass. We made it about halfway up the first night and camped. And the next morning we got up, we tried pushing on for another hour, but it got even steeper, and the road deteriorated even more. So we weren't probably even making a mile an hour, and we had 5 or 6 miles to go to the top. We were down to about 5 liters of water, and I just didn't see us getting it. So we turned around and went back down to the bottom. At the bottom, we were trying to figure out how we'd get over 37. And so we went back to Wind Spirit Community. I'm walking around the commune, and I ran into a woman, and she asked what I was doing, and I explained what I was doing, and she said, have a seat. And then she said, I have a little truck. you know, we could probably fit your bikes in the back. And she had a truck, and it had a cab on the back. And sure enough, we got both bikes and the trailer and the bags in it, and the three of us squeezed in the front seat, and she drove us over 37 to drop us off in Globe. We had a great lunch, and Jananda's a really wonderful woman. She had just great stories about her life. And then we got up the next morning because we had a long day. We had not only was it over 50 miles, but it had 3,500 feet of climbing in it. And so we wanted to be on the road and as far down as we could by the time the traffic picked up. And for the first few hours it was fine, but around 11 o'clock or so the traffic picked up. It got very busy. The shoulder was narrow, and they were just shooting by at 50, 60 miles an hour, sometimes just a foot or two away. And that was difficult, especially for somebody who's brand new to touring and is just beginning to understand the weight on her bike, how everything handles. And when a big truck goes by, if you've never toured and you haven't had bags on before, you feel a suck when it goes by. It just wasn't good for her. We made it into Payson, which we had to get onto a very, very busy road, the last 16 miles out, and the first 8 or so were fine. And then the last 8 miles into Payson is a 2,200 foot climb in 8 miles. And it's exposed in the hot sun, and it was really, really difficult. And when we got into Payson, we got a little Forest Service campground that night, and I'll be honest with you, it wasn't fun for me. It was just, we were constantly battling traffic. We were constantly battling heat. We were constantly having to carry lots and lots of water. And at the beginning of a trip of this length, I laid up that night and I just thought, this is not the way to start a big trip, especially for somebody who's never toured before. To pick the 2 hardest states, and let's pick the 2 hardest states to tour in. And so I realized that was just a fundamentally bad decision on my part. And so I laid in the campground, and I was going over the maps and the different routes that we would have to take and how we'd hit all the parks. And I came upon the idea that we could start at Hot Springs National Park in Hot Springs, Arkansas. And from there we could go from Hot Springs, do that, go through the Ozarks, pick up the Katy Trail in western Missouri, take that across to St. Louis. We'll be able to have a better choice of roads, a smoother ride. And like I said, we'll be heading to Clinton to pick up the Katy Trail. So that sort of explains why we're no longer in Arizona, but we're in Arkansas.
Hi, so my name is Alex. I know I haven't formally introduced myself yet onto this channel. I don't normally like to be in front of cameras, but I've been lately pressured, and I know it means a lot to people that I appear more onto these videos. So I'm going to try my best, and with everything that happened in Arizona, that was a lot to do with my ability of not being able to be a strong enough cyclist to bike through the highways and like the terrain in Arizona. So I just thought it'd probably be a good time for me to say hi, and that you know, I'm going to try better and I'm going to do better. And yeah, so I'm happy to hear that everyone's enjoying our videos, and I'll try to make more appearances in the future. So yeah, thanks. Like, subscribe, and comment, or whatever other YouTubers say.